Hey everyone, this is C Crypto Daily Buzz. Today is March 10th, 2026, and this channel brings you the most important crypto news for investors across Southeast Asia. We've packed 6 major stories for you today, so let's jump right in. Bitcoin is back above $70,000, and geopolitics is the driving force. In early Asia trading today, BTC climbed 2.32% to $70,581. Recovering from a low near 66,000 last week when Middle East tensions were at their peak. The catalyst: U.S. President Trump publicly stated that the Iran conflict would resolve very soon, which pushed equities higher and oil prices lower simultaneously, creating a risk-on environment that lifted crypto alongside traditional markets. On the derivative side, short positions got squeezed hard. Bitcoin shorts accounted for over 83% of the $128 million in 24-hour liquidations, with Ethereum and Solana seeing similar short-heavy wipeouts. That said, on-chain data shows that short-term hedges are still elevated even at the 70,000 recovery level, which tells us larger players are not fully convinced this bounce is sustainable. For investors in Southeast Asia watching from the Philippines, Vietnam, or Indonesia, the message is clear. Macro headlines are still driving BTC more than on-chain fundamentals right now. This bounce is real, but whether it holds depends entirely on what happens in the Middle East and in Washington over the next few days. Despite the price recovery, the market's emotional temperature remains deeply negative. The Crypto Fear and Greed Index came in at 13 today, up 5 points from yesterday, but still firmly in the extreme fear zone. The Altcoin Season Index also slipped to 36, confirming that capital is not rotating broadly into alts. What is technically significant is that Bitcoin's weekly RSI has now fallen below 30, entering oversold territory for the first time since early 2022. Historically, when the weekly RSI drops this low, it has marked major bottoms. We saw it near the June 2022 lows around $18,000, and before that in late 2018. However, the risk scenario is also on the table. In 2022, Bitcoin fell 41% from $31,700 to $18,700 after the RSI first touched oversold, before the actual bottom formed. My personal read: the oversold RSI is a meaningful technical signal that seller exhaustion may be building, but it is not a guaranteed floor. The index at 13 suggests most retail investors are already in fear mode, which historically is closer to a buying window than a selling one. But the macro environment means patience matters more than speed here. Michael Saylor's strategy, formerly known as MicroStrategy, has made its 100th plus Bitcoin purchase since 2020, and it was a big one. Between March 2nd and March 8th, the company acquired 17,994 BTC at an average price of $70,946 per coin, spending approximately $1.28 billion in total. This brings their aggregate holdings to 738,731 Bitcoin, representing roughly 3.5% of the entire circulating supply, at a total cost basis of $56.04 billion. To fund this purchase, Strategy used a combination of $900 million from common stock sales and $377 million from its STRC preferred stock offering. One important note: at today's prices around $68,000 to $70,000, their holdings are currently worth approximately $50 billion, sitting below their average acquisition cost of $75,862 per coin. Saylor himself called this milestone the second century of purchases, framing it as a long-term conviction bet regardless of short-term price levels. This matters for Southeast Asian investors because Strategy's continued accumulation at these levels signals that at least one major institutional player views current prices as acceptable entry, even if the broader market is in fear mode. Whether their concentrated, leveraged approach is a signal to follow or a risk to monitor is a scenario worth thinking carefully about. We still have 3 more important stories to cover. Let's continue. All right, let's move on to the next 3 stories. Institutional money flows in crypto ETFs are telling a very divided story right now. On March 9th, U.S. Bitcoin spot ETFs recorded a net inflow of $167.1 million, led by Fidelity's FBTC at $60 million, with BlackRock's IBIT adding $19.3 million. Over the full week, Bitcoin ETFs pulled in over $568 million, a meaningful signal of sustained institutional demand. Ethereum ETFs, however, told the opposite story, a net outflow of $51.26 million on the same day, with BlackRock's ETH alone seeing $55 million exit and Grayscale's ETH losing an additional $13.4 million. The week prior was even more dramatic. March 8th saw $373 million leave ETH ETFs in a single session. Solana funds also recorded outflows, reinforcing what the data shows clearly. Institutional capital is concentrating into Bitcoin and stepping back from altcoin-linked products. For investors in Southeast Asia holding a diversified crypto portfolio, this flow data suggests trimming alt exposure in favor of BTC may be the more conservative scenario right now. This is the story with the most direct relevance for everyday crypto users across Southeast Asia. Line Next, the Web3 arm of the Line messaging platform, has launched a new product called Unify, a stablecoin wallet built directly into Line Messenger. Users can deposit USDT and earn 4 to 5% APY, with a launch promotion offering up to 8% for early participants. The wallet is non-custodial, meaning users retain control of their own funds, and it supports social logins through Line, Google, Apple, and Naver. For withdrawals, Unify connects to Centbee for stablecoin to fiat conversion using AAA's Singapore-licensed digital payment infrastructure for off-ramp transactions. Line is deeply embedded in daily life across Thailand, Japan, and Taiwan, making this a potentially significant distribution channel for stablecoin adoption across Southeast Asia. The remittance use case is particularly compelling. Overseas Filipino workers, OFWs, and cross-border workers throughout the region could use Unify to send money home in stablecoins, bypassing traditional remittance fees. CEO Yongsoo Ko also indicated plans to expand Unify to support stablecoins from multiple countries, which could eventually include Southeast Asian currencies. From a personal perspective, this is one of the most practical on-ramps to stablecoin use we've seen targeting Southeast Asia directly. The Line distribution alone gives it a built-in audience of hundreds of millions. The risk scenario to watch is regulatory. As more countries in the region tighten digital asset rules, a Singapore-licensed off-ramp may face friction in markets like Indonesia or Vietnam. The U.S. Department of Justice is pushing to retry Roman Storm, the co-founder of the Tornado Cash crypto mixing protocol. The DOJ has formally requested retrial dates of either October 5th or October 12th of this year, following a first trial that ended in a jury deadlock. Storm faces charges of conspiracy to commit money laundering and conspiracy to violate U.S. sanctions, charges his defense team is challenging through a Rule 29 motion seeking acquittal, with arguments scheduled for April 9th. What complicates this case is the policy contradiction in Washington. The U.S. Treasury has acknowledged that mixing tools may have legitimate privacy uses, and the CFTC chair has publicly supported blockchain innovation. Yet the DOJ is pressing forward with prosecution, creating a clear tension between the regulatory softening under the Trump administration and the existing enforcement machinery. For developers and builders across Southeast Asia, the outcome of this retrial will define how much legal exposure exists for building neutral infrastructure tools. A conviction risks a chilling effect on open-source development globally. An acquittal would signal a more innovation-friendly legal environment. Before we wrap up, here's a quick recap of today's 6 stories. Story 1. Bitcoin reclaims 70,000 on Iran. De-escalation. Story 2. Fear and Greed Index stuck at extreme fear 13. Story 3. Strategy adds 1.28 billion in Bitcoin. Story 4. Bitcoin ETFs gain while Ethereum ETFs bleed. Story 5. Line launches Unify stablecoin wallet for Southeast Asia. Story 6. DOJ files for Tornado Cash developer retrial. This video is for information and education only and is not financial advice. All investment decisions and risks are your own responsibility. If this video was helpful, please consider subscribing, liking, and turning on the notification bell. Thank you for watching.